There are political ramifications of a government shutdown going into an election year. Iowa's on track to streamline state government, and 2 weeks into the no cash bail provision for Illinois shows big differences in how it works across the state. We'll get into that this morning with Democratic political consultant Porter McNeil and former Iowa State Representative David Millage, a Republican. Thank you both for being here. Let's get to it right away. We're going to start with Illinois and the implementation of no cash bail. We haven't heard too many rumblings in Rock Island County about the implementation of the immediate surrounding counties either, but there is stress on the court system in other parts of the state. Rich Miller got into this in great detail for the Chicago Sun-Times, as did Hannah Meisel for Capital News Illinois. They both point out that state law only requires counties with at least 35,000 people to have public defenders' offices. They point out 62 out of Illinois' 102 counties fall below that threshold and simply don't have the manpower to handle the new requirement, at least not quickly. The point of this isn't to debate the overall provision again, but this sounds like an unfunded mandate. So how will Illinois state lawmakers have to address this, or do they? Porter?
So as I understand it, there's a $10 million fund that was put into the Safety Act for the small and medium-sized counties that the local county judges and law enforcement systems can tap into if needed. Rock Island County is not one of those. So there were funds set aside. And as you all know, small counties aren't required to have public defenders in the old system. So in this system, they're going to have to tap into those funds, particularly as they work through the caseloads that are built up and as they work through the wrinkles in the first few weeks of the law, to make sure that your concern about small counties is addressed. But I think overall, the overall message is that the judges will decide on the safety of these defendants, and particularly groups like domestic violence groups were cheering this bill because in the past they would have immediate release, could have immediate release based on their ability to pay the bail. So overall, I think there's a positive recognition of the general principle of the bill. They have to work out those wrinkles, and I would not be surprised if the fall veto session there might be some bills to amend the Safety Act to help the smaller counties if this $10 million fund turns into be an inadequate system.
David, do you think that money is enough to get enough public defenders to handle it for the smaller counties?
Well, I don't know what Illinois' budget is like. I know that every defendant is entitled to an attorney if there's possibility of jail time, and we've relied here in Iowa not just on public defenders. We've relied upon court-appointed attorneys, which is what I did. I worked in when I first started practicing law, and which many attorneys still do. And they're going to have to go to a court-appointed system in Illinois where the defendant is appointed an attorney by the state, who's then paid by the state.
We'll see how they work that out in time. Big changes are likely on the way for boards and commissions in Iowa. The state committee set up to review which ones the state still needs and which should be eliminated issued its recommendations this week. It calls for getting rid of 111 of Iowa's 256 boards and commissions. That will leave 145 as part of the government if lawmakers go on to approve this plan. It also recommends dropping the requirement for gender balance on boards and suggests paying some people who serve on specific boards, like Iowa's Board of Regents, as one example. Supporters say this will overall help reduce government bloat. I guess, how effective can this be, and will other states do similar things, do you think, David?
Well, I think this was long overdue. I know that it was back in the 1980s. It's been since the 1980s when they reorganized government at that time. And when you look at the boards and commissions that we have in Iowa, I mean, 255, I believe it is. 256 boards currently, and the bill reduces it down to 145. There's been public input, and following the public input, they only made 2 changes to the commission's proposal. And this has to go through the legislature. There'll be hearings in the legislature on which boards are eliminated, which are consolidated, and it looks to me that it was long overdue.
And they saved a couple that had a potential risking losing federal funding. Porter, how effective can a move like this be? Does this set an example for other states?
Well, and you raised a good issue on the potential loss of federal funding. I think they have to be careful about, I think the program is AmeriCorps, Volunteer Iowa, groups that are able to tap into, boards that are able to tap into federal funds. Government reform is always something that government at all levels, local, county, state, federal, should always be looking to refresh government processes. My concern with this is 100, almost half, and the elimination of the diversity, will you lose diverse voices in Iowa at those local board and commission levels with this new direction? And will you lose some of that local input? I know they're talking about consolidating policy areas into the same area, but I'm concerned about the diversity, the lack of diversity moving forward with that, and I think they have to keep an eye on that.
David Milch, Porter McNeil, stand by. Still ahead, shutdown ramifications. How much a government stoppage matters to voters going into an election year. For the record.